The logo of Disability Network Eastern Michigan appears on a white background. There is a blue hollow circle with the words Disability Network across the middle and Eastern Michigan around the outside bottom right curve of the circle. Serving Huron, Lapeer, Macomb, Oakland, Sanilac, St. Clair, and Tuscola counties. For more information on Disability Network Eastern Michigan, check out our website at www.dnemichigan.org.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Astron, Community Education and Outreach Specialist with Disability Network Eastern Michigan. Today's video is going to focus on accessible events. We'll talk about some key things that you need to keep in mind for an event, as well as understanding that first impressions mean everything. So the way you interact with the disability community, even the words you use. Let me show you what I mean.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you point me towards accessible parking?
Accessible parking?
I have a disability.
Do you mean disabled parking?
Accessible parking, please. For
Is
persons
that-
with disabilities.
Can I see that? Is that handicap parking?
The term is accessible parking.
Oh, it's right over there.
Thank you.
Didn't think of it with your vehicle. Okay, there's a lot of things I did wrong here. First, I had a really negative attitude. And your first impression when you're greeting people sets the mood for the whole event. So be mindful when greeting them. One of the big things I did wrong here is I said the word disabled. To people in the disability community, the word disabled is an offensive term. Instead of using that word, refer to the person as a person with a disability, or don't use the word disabled at all. The other word I use that we shouldn't be saying is handicapped. It may seem innocent because we hear it every day, and we associate it a lot with parking when people say handicapped parking, but it's important to understand there's a negative historical connotation behind the word handicap. In early unwritten history, the word handicap was derived from cap in hand, which refers to begging in the street. In written history, the word handicap was long associated with sports. It was first associated with the lottery game known as hand in cap, and then later the term was applied to horse racing, where matchmakers, who later became known as handicappers, would add weights to fast horses and attempt to slow them down and try leveling the playing field. In the 19th century is when the term handicap was used to describe people who were physically or mentally flawed. The word has since fallen out of favor. Instead of using the word handicap or disabled, again, refer to them as a person with a disability. When referring to parking, avoid using the word handicap. Call it accessible parking. I also made a judgment of the vehicle the person was in. Matter of fact is, there are non-visible disabilities, which are disabilities that we can't see. These may include underlying medical condition, such as asthma, heart condition, low vision, or even blindness, as well as if someone might have had a joint replacement or they have a prosthetic limb. So just keep that in mind. Don't judge them. If they show you the accessible parking permit, direct them to accessible parking. Hi there.
Hi, can you point me towards accessible parking?
Do you have a pass?
My accessibility pass.
Perfect. So it's straight ahead and it'll be over to your right.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day. So when it comes to events that we're holding, or that anyone would hold, what are some things that we have to think about to make the event accessible for everybody in the disability community?
That's a great question, Jeffrey. When we look at larger community events, persons with disabilities may have other considerations on their mind when determining whether or not they should attend the event. They want to make sure that the space is going to be accessible for them and all of their accommodations or needs are going to be met.
So there's a few key things that come to mind. The one would be, what about med?
Absolutely. Medicines, that's a critical question. We want to ensure that folks who are attending the events know if they can bring their medicines into the event. If there is a baggage requirement, can we bring that medicine into the venue? Additionally, will there be a safe space where that person can go to administer medications without having to go to a bathroom?
So what about assistive technologies such as mobility devices?
That's a great question, Jeffrey. Some people may not want to bring their assistive device with them, or may not feel the need to bring it initially, but then find a point that it would be convenient to have access to a scooter or a walker or a wheelchair. Those are great considerations to have before even attending the event. If my scooter malfunctions, is there access to a wheelchair? Is there access to assistive device that will help me navigate the event?
So speaking of the mobility devices, what about accessible parking? What do we need to keep in mind about that?
Yeah, I think in this video, Jeffrey, we spoke a little bit about accessible parking and fear of being judged for requesting to park in an accessible, not a handicap, but an accessible parking space. Is there going to be ample parking if I show up to the event? And will I have to worry about arriving and finding out that there is no additional parking space available for me as a person with a disability?
What about accessible restrooms?
That's a great question. Accessible restrooms, we're looking at a variety of functions. We want to make sure that there is an adult changing space should there be a person in the party who is requiring assistance while changing or while using the restroom. Additionally, if I am a wheelchair user or a mobility device user, is there a restroom that is available for me as a person with a disability, which it should be?
What about people with anxiety? Do they need a quiet space?
A quiet area or a calming area is something that we'll commonly associate with persons who have autism. We're looking for an area that's going to be a quiet, safe zone. It's going to be free of loud noises. We're going to be free of bright, distracting lights or lots of things that are stimulating the senses and possibly causing anxiety for persons who have anxiety-related barriers and or autism.
And how about accessible pathways?
Accessible paths are a critical function of anything we do in person. We know there are regulations set forth by the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, that require us to have clear pathways. We want to ensure that everyone feels comfortable navigating the space without having to ask someone to clear an aisleway for them because it's supposed to be left available for a person with a mobility device to access the area just as anyone else would.
So speaking of accessible paths, what about curb cuts and ramps?
Yeah, curb cuts and ramps actually, a curb cut originated here in Michigan, which is a fun story. But the curb cut is that ramp that we see at the bottom of a sidewalk that moves us from an elevated position onto level ground. If we have a large elevated platform that we're moving across the entire time, and that individual is using a wheelchair or a mobility device, they need to have the ability to get off of that space and onto flat ground. So do we have curb cuts and do we have the opportunity for mobility devices to clearly move over cables or things that may be on the ground that could be an obstruction?
This was really helpful.
Thanks, Jeffrey. All of these things go into mind when persons with disabilities are considering whether or not they should participate in an event without fear of judgment. We hope these are all considerations that you'll think of when you're planning your event.
Mission statement.
Disability Network Eastern Michigan is committed to promoting inclusion for all by breaking down barriers and opening paths towards independence and personal choice through resources, advocacy, information, support, and education. Disability Network Eastern Michigan's vision is together the work that each one of us does helps towards our vision of being a community where those living with disabilities are empowered to pursue personal growth and choice through access to community resources and supportive services. Disability Network Eastern Michigan's logo appears again on a white background, serving Huron, Lapeer, Macomb, Oakland, Sanilac, St. Clair, and Tuscola counties. For more information, check out our website at www.dnemichigan.org.